Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the shadows of the heroes, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight. And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. In the quiet corners of Ooo, when the sun sinks beneath the candy-colored hills and the air hums softly with twilight, something gentle begins to stir. Not a creature exactly, but an echo, the faint shimmer of what once was. These are the shadows that linger long after the light has moved on. Not the dark that frightens, but the kind that remembers. The kind that hums like an old song, half forgotten, half alive. You see, in a world like Ooo, where magic breathes through everything, even emotions can leave footprints. A hero's laughter might hang in the trees, their fears might settle in the soil, and their dreams might drift across the stars. Shadows here are not just the absence of light. They are the gentle residue of living all the moments, thoughts, and feelings that couldn't quite let go. Every soul leaves an imprint, especially the ones who shine the brightest. The adventurers, the caretakers, the fools and lovers and kings, they burn so vividly that the world itself remembers them. The land keeps their warmth, their choices, their echoes. It remembers what they loved, what they lost, and what they feared to become. These memories ripple outward until they take shape again as whispers, mirages, or even living spirits that wander through time. And in Ooo, where the boundaries between dream and reality are as thin as mist, those ripples sometimes grow strong enough to live a second life. The past doesn't simply fade here, it reincarnates. A hero's old dream might grow legs, a regret might sprout wings, and an unspoken wish might turn into a creature that roams the midnight forests. These are the shadows of the heroes, the pieces of themselves they've outgrown. The fragments that keep wandering even when their owners have changed. When we think of heroes, we often picture their triumphs, their bright, shining selves standing tall in the sunlight. But for every victory, there's a moment of doubt that slips quietly behind them. For every lesson learned, there's an older belief left behind in the dark. And in Oo's strange and breathing magic, even those forgotten feelings find a way to stay. Somewhere between the waking world and the dreamlands, there is a place where these shadows gather. It's not quite visible, not unless you look in the right kind of light, the dim blue that comes before dawn, or the silver that hangs between raindrops. There, the lost parts of heroes drift like firefly. Finn's childhood laughter flickers through the trees. Ice King's longing hums in the wind. Marceline's tears ripple through the rivers of the night. They are not gone. Not really. They've just changed shape. Ooo has always been a world made of stories, and stories never truly end. They fold into each other, retold in new voices, reshaped by new hearts. The shadows are a part of that cycle. They are the old verses of a song still being written. When a hero changes, when they grow or break or find peace, something within them remains behind to tell the version of the story that no one else could. The child that once believed in endless adventure, the lover who never stopped hoping, the fool who learned to be wise. In this way, shadows are sacred. They hold a memory of who we were before we knew better. They remind us of the softness we had to leave behind to become who we are now. And though they may seem distant mere whispers carried by the wind, they're always near, watching from the edges of our dreams. Oo's ancient magic thrives on memory. Every crystal, every tree, every drop of water remembers something. That's why the past is never truly gone there. It sleeps beneath the surface, humming like a buried melody. When someone passes through a place heavy with history, sometimes the air feels thicker, quieter, as though it's holding its breath. Maybe that's because it's listening. listening to the shadows that once filled its silence. Think of Princess Bubblegum's kingdom. Every sweet, shining tower she built stands upon the bones of old mistakes, creations that turned against her, experiments that became monsters, dreams that dissolved into nightmares. Yet even those failures have form. Some roam the edges of her kingdom like ghosts of logic and love, still seeking purpose. Even in her perfection, her shadows whisper, reminding her of the price of progress. And think of the forests, how they hum when Finn walks beneath their canopies. The trees remember him as the boy with the bright sword, the one who once believed the world could be saved with courage alone. They remember the songs he sang to himself in the dark, the promises he whispered when no one was listening. Those memories never faded. They sank into the soil and grew roots. It's almost as if Ooo itself dreams of its heroes. The land has seen too much to forget. When a person changes, Ooo sighs and reshapes itself as though the earth itself adjusts to accommodate their new form. But the old versions linger, like echoes caught between heartbeats. Sometimes you might catch them out of the corner of your eye, a fleeting figure standing by a riverbank, a laugh that doesn't belong to anyone nearby, a shimmer of warmth that feels strangely familiar. Those are the shadows gently wandering through the folds of the present. And maybe that's what makes Ooo so hauntingly beautiful, that everything, even the unseen, still belongs. The world carries every version of its heroes. It forgives them, even when they can't forgive themselves. The shadows are not punishments or curses. They're memories that refuse to fade. Love stories that never found an ending. Pieces of time that still wish to be remembered. In the quiet night when Finn dreams, when Marceline hums softly to herself, when the wind curls through the Ice Kingdom's ruins, those shadows stir. They whisper not of sorrow, but of remembrance. They are what happens when light learns to love the dark. There's a calmness to these shadows, a gentleness that mirrors the way memories age. They lose their sharp edges, their heat, and what remains is something tender, a faint afterglow of what once burned brightly. Imagine standing in the ruins of an old battlefield long after the war is forgotten. The air still hums with the echo of courage, fear, and loss, but all that's left now is the sound of wind through the grass. That's what Ooo feels like sometimes. A land where every shadow tells a story if you're quiet enough to listen. When the heroes of Ooo walk through their world, they're never truly alone. Each step stirs the dust of what they've outgrown. Finn walks with the shadow of the boy who once believed in perfect endings. Jake carries the shade of the reckless pup who never thought about consequences. Even Princess Bubblegum is trailed by her younger self, the one who thought she could build order out of chaos without breaking a single heart. These old selves aren't haunting them, not in the way ghosts might. They're watching softly, like parents letting go of their children. In Ooo, growth has always come with a strange kind of magic. Change is not only emotional, it's elemental. When someone learns something, the world seems to shift slightly, as though the lesson ripples outward, reshaping the very air. That's why shadows are so persistent. They aren't mistakes left behind. They're the proof that transformation has occurred. Every time a hero changes, something is set free. Perhaps that's why the dream realms are so crowded. Night after night, when the people of Ooo close their eyes, their minds drift through a sea of old reflections. The dreamscape becomes a meeting ground for these discarded selves, a quiet marketplace of memories. You might see Finn's childhood spirit chasing glowing fish across the stars, or the phantom of a younger Marceline sitting by a campfire strumming a song no one remembers. These aren't illusions. They are continuations, the dreams that couldn't fit into the waking world anymore. There's an ancient story whispered among the ghosts of Ooo about how every hero casts 3 shadows. The first follows them in the light their public face, their legend. The second sleeps in the dark, the things they fear and hide away. And the third, the quietest of all, walks ahead of them, unseen, the person they're still becoming. These 3 are never separate, only layered. The trick is learning to recognize them in the patterns of our own stories. The same is true for the people of Ooo. Magic doesn't only come from spells or artifacts. It often comes from memory, from longing, from pieces of the soul that have learned to exist beyond the body. That's why shadows can be kind. They hold on to what their owners might have forgotten, the reasons they began, the truths they once believed in. When Finn doubts himself, maybe it's his shadow that keeps him steady, the small boy who still believes in doing what's right, even when it hurts. When Marceline feels lost, maybe her shadow hums beside her, reminding her that love was never a weakness. And if you've ever noticed how Oo's nights seem to shimmer, how the darkness itself feels full of quiet movement, maybe that's because the shadows of heroes are still out there, walking softly through the world. They gather near forgotten temples, in caves lit by bioluminescent moss, or by rivers that reflect the stars perfectly. Some say that if you listen closely enough, you can hear them speaking to each other, not with words, but with emotion, a hum of bravery, a sigh of grief, a laugh that sounds like home. To most of Oo's inhabitants, these things go unnoticed. Life is too loud, too full of candy wars and magical mischief, but to those who wander, the ones who stay awake just a little longer than they should, the signs are there. A flicker of light that shouldn't be there. A breeze that smells faintly like an old friend. The echo of a melody from no known source. The shadows are patient, gentle witnesses, keeping the world from forgetting what it once was. And maybe that's the secret heartbeat of Ooo memory made manifest. Every hero's growth, every heartbreak, every quiet revelation leaves behind a trace that nourishes the world. Without these shadows, Ooo would lose its depth, its dreamlike melancholy, its sense of time. It's the forgotten pieces of its people that give it texture. The laughter that lingers, the tears that stain the soil, the promises whispered into the dark. Because if the heroes of Ooo represent the light, courage, kindness, change, then their shadows represent the heart, the quiet, enduring reminder of why those things matter. Light without shadow is flat, unfeeling, but together they create contrast, warmth, and life. Sometimes when a star falls over the Candy Kingdom, or when a faint shape moves through the ruins of the Ice Kingdom, it's said that a shadow has come home. Maybe the part of a hero that was once lost has found peace again. Maybe the forgotten boy, the weary king, the lonely child has been remembered, and that memory becomes light once more. There's something strangely comforting about that thought that nothing in Ooo truly disappears. Even when people change beyond recognition, even when their stories seem finished, something of them lingers, like a note still vibrating long after the music has stopped. That faint hum carries through the roots of the world, through rivers and clouds and dreams, reminding everything alive that once, somewhere, there was love, or hope, or courage. If you've ever watched the clouds roll over Ooo at dusk, you might have noticed how they seem to move with intention, not quite random, but guided, like drifting thoughts. Some believe those clouds carry the light of old souls, bits of forgotten dreams returning to the sky, a reflection of the way heroes, too, scatter pieces of themselves across time. Every laugh Finn shared, every tear Marceline shed, every moment of madness or grace from Ice King, the world catches it. Ooo listens. Ooo keeps it safe. And that's what makes shadows so precious. They are the soft records of experience. Not ghosts in the frightening sense, but gentle keepers of memory. When we dream, we do something similar. We revisit who we were, touch the fragments we've left behind, and make peace with them in secret. Ooo, being a land woven with magic, dreams in much the same way. Each night, as its creatures sleep, the world itself drifts into reflection. Mountains hum, rivers whisper, and the air fills with flickering images of all the lives it has seen. In those moments, the shadows move most freely. They wander between realms, not living, not dead, but existing in that tender middle space where meaning and memory blur. Some drift toward the dream realm, where thoughts take form like ripples in water. Others travel through time, drawn toward moments that mirror their essence. A heroic impulse, a song, a fleeting act of kindness, all can call a shadow back into being, even for just a heartbeat. Maybe that's why some things in Ooo feel familiar, even when they shouldn't. Why a traveler might visit a place they've never been and still feel a strange sense of home. The land itself remembers. When you stand in a glade where Finn once laughed, the air still knows that sound. When you rest beside a lake where Marceline once cried, the water still carries her reflection. Even the wind that brushes the Ice Kingdom's peaks holds Simon's voice, a quiet hum of longing beneath the cold. If you close your eyes and breathe deeply, you might feel it, the pulse of all those stories still moving beneath the surface. Ooo is a patchwork of lives layered over each other, the present forever mingling with echoes of the past, and shadows are the bridges between them. They are the unseen guides that help the living walk paths once taken by others. When a hero finds courage in despair, it might be a shadow's whisper that lights the way. When a lost soul feels suddenly less alone, perhaps it's because an old echo has wrapped around them like a forgotten lullaby. The ancients of Ooo, the beings who watched the world rise from ash after the Mushroom War, believed that the soul wasn't just one thing. They said it was like a cluster of stars, each light representing a part of a person. Joy, sorrow, curiosity, hunger, love. When someone grows, those stars shift and change. Some dim, some vanish. Some drift into the world, free to shine elsewhere. These wandering sparks became what we now think of as shadows, remnants of human emotion, too luminous to fade completely. And in a way, this makes the heroes of Ooo eternal. Not through immortality or legend, but through this quiet scattering of spirit. Each act of growth sends a part of them outward into the fabric of existence. When Finn learned mercy, maybe that lesson became a warm breeze in another corner of the world. When Ice King felt love, maybe that emotion sank into the snow, softening the cold for ages to come. When Marceline sang about her loneliness, maybe her words became constellations that guide the lost home. These are the gentle alchemies that hold Ooo together. Not spells, not grand prophecies, but small, enduring traces of humanity. Even in a land filled with candy creatures, cosmic gods, and ancient curses, it's still the simple human things, laughter, kindness, sorrow that shape the deepest magic. The shadows of the heroes are the purest form of that magic. They also remind Ooo that light and dark are not enemies. They depend on each other. One defines the other. For every triumph, there must be loss. For every act of love, there must be longing. The shadows embody this balance. They are the quiet acceptance that nothing can stay whole forever. The change is the truest kind of beauty. When you see the reflection of stars in the water, when you notice how dawn and dusk look almost the same, That's the shadow of the world showing its understanding that even endings are just beginnings seen from another side. In this way, shadows are gentle teachers. They remind the heroes of Ooo and us to honor what we've outgrown, not to reject it. To look back at the people we once were and thank them for getting us here. For without those past selves, those half-formed versions, stumbling toward meaning, the present would have no shape. Every mistake and every broken dream, every old smile became a stepping stone toward light. The shadows hold that truth softly, without judgment. They do not ask to be reclaimed or erased. They only wish to be remembered. And perhaps that's what makes Ooo feel alive, its capacity for remembrance. Every valley and star and silent ruin is a vessel for stories that once breathed. The heroes who now rest, or who have moved beyond their old selves, are still here in fragments, scattered like seeds across the soil of time. Some say that when the night over Ooo grows completely still, when even the wind forgets to move, the world is listening to its own heart. That's when the shadows speak the loudest. Not with words, but with presence. They gather like mist over the plains, taking shapes too faint to see, but somehow familiar to the soul. You might feel them when you lie beneath the stars, that gentle sense that something vast and kind is remembering you back. In that hush, the boundaries between then and now blur. The heroes asleep in their homes, the ghosts lost in the wilds, the forgotten names carved into ruins, all of them share the same dream. It's a dream made of echoes, looping softly through time. The shadows are the storytellers of that dream, keeping every memory stitched together so that Ooo never forgets who it has been. When Finn gazes into the night sky, there's always a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He might not know why, but he's looking at the reflection of his own past, all the versions of himself who once looked up with the same wonder. The child who dreamed of glory, the teenager who questioned what heroism even meant, the young man who learned to forgive himself. Their shadows are still out there, written across the constellations, whispering, "You are not alone. We're still here." Marceline feels it too, though she would never say it aloud. In the moments between songs, when her voice fades into silence, she can hear the echo of her younger self humming along. The one who still believed her mother might come home. The one who didn't yet understand why love hurts and still sang about it anyway. That echo lives on in the spaces between her notes, filling them with tenderness that words alone could never hold. Even the Ice King's shadow still wanders the snows. It's not Simon, not anymore. But neither is it just madness. It's something softer, a fragment of compassion caught in the frost. When the northern lights ripple through the sky, some say it's his sorrow painting color under the cold. A gentle offering from a soul that once burned too brightly, now content to glow quietly from afar. These shadows, scattered though they are, form a kind of secret fellowship. They are the second story running parallel to the one we see. While the heroes move forward, their echoes watch from the periphery, carrying the weight of what has been left unsaid. They are the keepers of lessons too deep for language, the small, essential truths that can only be felt in stillness. And maybe that's why Ooo feels so alive even in its quietest moment. It's never truly empty. Every breeze, every flicker of light, every strange dream that drifts through the night carries the pulse of countless old hearts still beating softly beneath the surface. The world is made of continuity, of memory refusing to vanish. Each shadow is a thread, weaving past and present together until time itself feels less like a line and more like a circle gently turning forever.
If you could step outside time and look at Ooo as it truly is, you might see it glowing with countless overlapping silhouettes, thousands of lives folded together like layers of watercolor, some bright and bold, some faint as mist. Finn's shadow hand in hand with his current self, Simon's sorrow curving into hope, Marceline's loneliness melting into love, 1,000 shades of self all learning to coexist. That's the secret grace of shadows. They remind us that light alone isn't the whole story. Without the dim places, there would be no contrast, no texture, no understanding. Growth depends on darkness, the kind that lets us rest, dream, and rebuild. The heroes of Ooo may have conquered monsters and crossed worlds, but their truest victories were the quiet ones. The moments they forgave, the times they let go, the nights they sat with their own shadows and learned not to be afraid. So when you think of a hero shadow, don't imagine something sinister. Imagine a memory that stayed behind to keep the world company, a reflection that keeps the story balanced. Oo's magic ensures that every ending becomes the seed of a new beginning, and the shadows are the soil that holds those seeds. Without them, the world would lose its gentleness, its dreamlike hum, its sense that even the forgotten still matter. And maybe in some way that's true for us as well. Perhaps the parts of ourselves we've outgrown, the mistakes, the old dreams, the naive hopes, don't disappear either. Maybe they drift somewhere quiet, waiting to be remembered kindly. Every time we look back with love, every time we forgive our younger selves, we shine a small light into that place where shadows rest. Ooo teaches us that light and dark don't oppose each other. They dance. They hold hands at twilight and trade stories beneath the moon. The heroes cast their shadows, and the shadows, in turn, cradle their memories with care. Together, they make the world whole. So, as the night deepens and Ooo falls into its gentle sleep, the shadows hum softly through the land. They move like whispers through the trees, like warmth beneath the snow, like lullabies carried by the wind. The world listens, and in that hush, everything feels connected, the living, the lost, and the dreaming all part of one slow, endless breath. And that is the nature of shadows. When we think of Finn the human, we often see him as the brave adventurer, the boy in the blue shirt, sword in hand, running through forests and ruins with Jake by his side. But beneath that cheerful grin and boundless energy, there was something deeper a heart that had to grow too quickly, a spirit that carried more weight than a child should ever know. Tonight, we're not following Finn the hero. We're tracing the quiet path of the boy he used to be and the shadow he left behind. There was a time when Finn believed everything in the world could be fixed with courage. Monsters could be defeated. Evil could be redeemed. Love was simple, and friends were forever. His world was a clear, shining picture, bright skies, clear choices, and a heart full of adventure. When he first began his journey, Ooo was a playground of wonders. Every battle was a game, every mystery a treasure hunt, every challenge a chance to prove his strength. The innocence in him was not ignorance. It was faith that the world was good, that he could protect it, that his story would always end well. But Ooo has a way of showing its truths slowly. The deeper Finn wandered into its heart, the more he began to see the cracks beneath the colors. He met beings who weren't simply good or evil, but both at once creatures shaped by pain, loneliness, and choices that couldn't be undone. He saw kingdoms rise and crumble, friendships fracture and mend, and dreams lose their shape in the passing of time. And as those realizations settled in, something in Finn began to shift. The boy who once laughed in the face of the danger started to question what danger even meant. The monsters he once fought began to look less monstrous. The villains he once hated began to look familiar, broken, confused, just like him. Every adventure began to reveal more than it promised. Every victory carried a small shadow. The innocence that once made Finn's heart so light started to become something he had to carry. Think of his journey like a long summer day slowly turning toward dusk. The light doesn't vanish all at once, it softens. The golden edges fade into violet, and in that quiet transition, everything becomes more complicated, more beautiful, more real. That was Finn's growing up, a sunset stretched across years of love and loss. There's a scene that captures this change perfectly when Finn meets the ghost of Shoko, the girl who once lived another life in the same treehouse. Her story mirrors his in strange, tender ways. Another lost soul chasing redemption. Another adventurer bound to the same dream. When Finn returns her stolen arm, the gesture feels small, but it's sacred. It's him touching the past, acknowledging the forgotten pain of someone who came before. In that moment, we glimpse how deeply Finn feels the world. He doesn't just fight for it, he listens to it. And yet, listening comes with a price. As he grows, he begins to understand that not everything broken can be repaired. Not every wound can be healed with kindness or bravery. His heart, so eager to save everyone, begins to ache beneath the weight of empathy. The child who once declared himself a hero starts to see that being a hero is not about glory, it's about a loss. This is where the shadow of his innocence begins to form. It's not a dark or a bitter thing, but a quiet echo of who he was, the version of Finn who still believes, still hopes without hesitation. You can almost imagine that shadow running through the forests of Ooo, laughing as it once did, calling out to him from somewhere just out of sight. It's the part of him that refuses to stop dreaming, even as the rest of him learns to live with disappointment. In a world where emotions carry energy, that lost innocence might not be gone at all. It might have taken on a life of its own, a spirit of wonder, still exploring the corners of Ooo, chasing butterflies through ruins and playing with the ghosts of forgotten kingdoms. Perhaps, when the night is quiet and the stars are low, that spirit still walks beside Finn, unseen, keeping him company as he wrestles with the weight of all he's learned. The older Finn becomes, the more he feels that presence, the sense of something just beyond reach. Sometimes it comes to him in dreams, other times in memories that don't belong to him. The child he used to be still lives in his heart, reminding him not to harden, not to give up on the magic that first made him who he was. And in Ooo, where thoughts can shape reality, maybe that memory truly exists, somewhere a reflection of his purest self. Who's still waiting in a dream where the world never lost its color. There's something deeply moving about that idea that innocence doesn't vanish when we outgrow it. It becomes a guardian, a gentle echo that lingers to protect what remains of our softness. Finn's shadowed innocence is not trapped or lost. It's watching over him, ensuring that even as he learns pain and complexity, he never loses the light that once defined him. When Finn met the grass sword, when he faced the part of himself that could destroy rather than protect, it wasn't just a battle with a weapon, it was a confrontation with his own growing shadow. The sword whispered of power, of pride, of the thrill of victory untempered by compassion. For a time, Finn's purity faltered, tangled in the vines of what he could become if he stopped caring. But even then, his innocence didn't leave. It stayed close, like a faint glow beneath the surface, guiding him back toward himself. As he matured, his adventures became less about defeating enemies and more about understanding them. He began to ask why people hurt, why they change, why even good intentions sometimes go wrong. The world no longer fit into the simple boxes of right and wrong that once shaped his childhood. And yet, in that uncertainty, he found something even stronger than innocence, empathy. Empathy became Finn's new compass, softer, slower, but infinitely wiser. It guided him through the gray places where his old sense of justice once failed. When he faced the Flame Princess after their breakup, he didn't try to win her back or prove himself right. Instead, he simply sat with the ache, learning that love wasn't about possession, but understanding. The boy who once rushed to fix everything began to realize that some things are meant to be felt, not solved. That was the quiet turning point in his story when his heart stopped reaching outward for validation and started turning inward, listening to itself. Finn had always wanted to be a hero, but now he began to see that true heroism sometimes meant sitting with pain, letting it soften you instead of hardening you. The world wasn't asking him to save it anymore. It was asking him to see it fully, gently, without judgment. Even the way Finn interacted with his friends began to change. With Jake, he grew less dependent and more reflective. Their bond matured from childlike adventure into a kind of soulful companionship. They didn't need to fill every silence with laughter or every day with quests. Sometimes they could just sit under the stars, letting the stillness speak for them. It's in those quiet moments that Finn's shadow, the echo of his lost innocence, feels closest. The boy who once shouted into the world has learned to listen to the whisper of his own heart. And yet, that shadow still lingers in strange, unseen ways. When Finn dreams, the dreamscapes often take him back to simpler times. Grassy fields, bubble mountains, candy clouds. The world of his imagination, bright and unspoiled, continues to exist somewhere within him. It's almost as though his younger self never disappeared, but rather stepped into another layer of Ooo, waiting for him to visit when he closes his eyes. There's a haunting beauty to that. In Adventure Time, the boundaries between reality and emotion, between person and dream, are fragile. Shadows can become spirits. Memories can form places. Feelings can shape entire worlds. So it's not impossible to imagine that Finn's innocence, his pure joy, his unquestioning belief in good still wanders through that invisible landscape. Maybe that's why he can still feel hope even after everything he's endured. Somewhere deep inside, his younger self still believes. It reminds me of when Finn encounters the Pillow World, a dreamlike realm where he lives an entire lifetime as another version of himself. That experience reveals something profound, that every stage of life leaves a trace, an imprint, that continues to live on, even when the conscious mind moves forward. The boy Finn once was, the pillow man he became, the elder he might grow into, they're all shadows cast from the same light. Each one is real in its own way, each one shaping the next. And in the quiet aftermath of that experience, Finn doesn't emerge bitter or lost. Instead, he's peaceful. The realization that life changes, that we change, doesn't break him. It humbles him. He understands now that growing up means letting go, but that letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Every version of himself still lives within him, whispering softly, guiding his steps. There's something deeply comforting in that thought. Because if we follow the rhythm of Finn's story, we see that innocence doesn't vanish into the void it transforms. It becomes wisdom, compassion, resilience. The child within doesn't die. It learns to rest, becoming a gentle presence that helps the older self carry on. It's the quiet part of Finn that still laughs when he sees a funny-shaped cloud, that still believes in the goodness of strangers, that still cries when something beautiful happens. In a way, the shadow of his innocence isn't behind him at all. It walks beside him, not as a ghost, but as a reminder that everything we outgrow remains a part of us, waiting to be acknowledged with love. Ooo itself seems to honor that truth. The land is filled with echoes of its own lost innocence relics of the pre-Mushroom War world. Toys buried in the earth, playgrounds turned to ruins, and yet flowers still bloom through the cracks. The same thing happens in Finn's heart. Though he carries scars, he also carries wildflowers, small pieces of beauty that refuse to die. And when he encounters younger beings like Fern, or the children of Oo's new age, he treats them with a gentleness born from experience. He doesn't try to protect them from pain, but he also doesn't burden them with it. Instead, he stands at the threshold between who he was and who they are becoming, offering quiet guidance. That's the mark of someone who has made peace with his shadow, not to destroy it, not to erase it, but to let it exist, honored and seen. So maybe Finn's lost innocence is not lost at all. Maybe it's the quiet glow that keeps his spirit human, even in a world of gods, magic, and madness. It's the small, unwavering part of him that still chooses kindness, even when it hurts. It's the echo that reminds him that he once believed in simple good, and that, even now, that belief still matters. When we look at Finn this way, we realize his journey isn't about becoming something new, but remembering what he's always been, a heart that keeps learning how to love the world, no matter how strange or broken it becomes. In time, that love becomes something quieter, less of a spark, more of a steady flame, the kind that keeps glowing through the long nights of the soul. Finn's understanding of love stretches beyond romance or adventure. It becomes a kind of presence, a way of being with the world. When he helps Simon, when he forgives Fern, when he comforts a creature who has lost its way, those moments are echoes of the boy who once believed everything could be fixed, but now believes everything deserves to be felt. The beauty of Finn's growth is that it doesn't erase his past. Instead, it folds it gently into who he is. Every triumph, every heartbreak, every loss becomes a part of his story, and somewhere, the shadow of his innocence watches quietly, proud of how far he's come. You can almost picture it, a younger Finn, sitting on a hill made of clouds, smiling faintly as he watches his older self navigate the strange, beautiful world below. There's no bitterness in his eyes, only understanding. Because in the end, the child inside him never wanted him to stay the same. He only wanted him to keep caring. And that's what makes Finn's journey feel so profoundly human. Adventure time often disguises its deepest truths behind whimsy and absurdity, but Finn's story is a mirror for all of us. Growing up isn't about losing who we were. It's about learning to hold that version of ourselves with tenderness. It's realizing that innocence and wisdom aren't opposites. They're part of the same circle. The light that once blinded us becomes the same light that now guides us home. In one quiet episode, Finn lies in the grass, looking up at the sky. He doesn't talk much. He doesn't need to. The world hums softly around him, and for a moment, everything feels still. That silence holds something sacred, the peace of someone who has stopped running from himself. You can feel that he has made peace with his shadow. The boy who once ran toward every battle now understands the beauty of stillness. And perhaps in that stillness, the shadow of his innocence curls up beside him, like a loyal friend who never truly left. Ooo itself seems to respond to that inner balance. The colors feel softer, the landscapes less chaotic. Even the magic of the world changes, not gone, but gentler, as if it recognizes that its greatest hero no longer needs to fight to be worthy. Finn's adventures in the later seasons become more introspective, almost dreamlike. They drift between worlds, between time and memory, between who he was and who he might become. The line between waking and dreaming grows thin, and through it all, that shadow of innocence keeps flickering faint, but constant. When Finn meets Fern, his grass clone, the two of them embody this idea perfectly. Fern is like a distorted echo of Finn's younger self, fierce, confused, desperate to prove his worth. Their conflict isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's the struggle between who Finn was and who he's become. And when that story reaches its end, Finn doesn't destroy his shadow, he embraces it. He holds Fern's hand as he fades away, whispering comfort, offering peace. That moment's quiet, but it's one of the most powerful in the entire series, because it's the culmination of everything Finn has learned, that love and forgiveness are stronger than fear, that every part of himself deserves compassion, even the ones that hurt him. That's the truest kind of healing, not to cast away what we've outgrown, but to give it rest. Finn's shadow, his innocence, his pain, all find harmony in that single act of mercy. It's a reminder that growing up isn't about perfection or clarity. It's about acceptance. It's realizing that the person we were still lives inside us, guiding us quietly toward gentleness. And sometimes, when Finn walks through the twilight landscapes of Ooo, past the old ruins of human cities, past the glowing lakes where the stars reflect like lanterns, you can almost sense it. That other presence walking beside him. The faint sound of laughter, the echo of his younger voice calling out, mathematical, carried softly on the wind. Maybe it's just a memory, or maybe, in a world as strange and alive as Ooo, memories become their own kind of spirit. That thought is strangely comforting, that our best moments, our purest feelings, might live on somewhere, still playing, still shining. And perhaps that's what Finn's innocence has become. Not a ghost haunting him, but a light that travels with him, reminding him of where he came from. It's the spark that keeps his kindness alive, even when everything else falls apart. And in the very last moments of the show, when Finn and Jake float together into the unknown beyond time, beyond form, that light feels complete. Finn has carried his shadow through every stage of life. And at last, they are one again. The boy and the man, the dream and the reality, the innocence and the wisdom all held together in perfect balance. It's a soft, gentle truth that we never truly lose the parts of ourselves we've outgrown. They become our shadows, following us quietly through the years, teaching us how to see beauty even in sadness, and reminding us always that who we were made us who we are. And so when we think of Finn the human, we shouldn't only see the hero with a sword in hand. We should also see the child still laughing somewhere in the distance, his small shadow cast beneath the great sky of Ooo, waving goodbye, not with sorrow, but with peace. And as we drift deeper into the story of Finn's shadow, it's worth remembering that his innocence was never a weakness. It was the seed from which everything else grew: his courage, his compassion, his unshakable belief that the world, no matter how broken, still deserved love. What he lost was not that purity itself, but the simplicity that once held it. And what he gained was the strength to carry it into complexity. In the earliest days of his journey, Finn wanted to be a hero who saved everyone. But by the end, he became something far gentler, a soul who wanted to understand everyone. And perhaps that's what true growth looks like. The shadow of his innocence didn't fade away into darkness. It stretched out, becoming part of a larger light. It softened the edges of his heart, allowing him to love people as they are, not as he wanted them to be. This change is beautifully reflected in the way Ooo itself evolves. The land, once vibrant and chaotic, begins to quiet down, less about wild battles and more about connection. The energy that once fueled wars and quests turns inward, becoming reflective, almost dreamlike. Just as Finn finds peace, so too does the world around him. It's as if his heart and the land are bound together, both learning to rest after so many years of struggle. You can feel it most clearly in the gentle rhythm of his later adventures. There are fewer battles, fewer declarations of destiny. Instead, there are conversations, moments of listening, healing, forgiving. Finn walks through old places not to conquer them, but to understand them. He meets people who remind him of his younger self, reckless, hopeful, afraid, and treats them not as students or followers, but as reflections of who he once was. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he seems to sense that shadow still nearby. Maybe it lingers in the edges of his dreams, or in the laughter of a child running through the grass. Perhaps he hears it in the voice of the wind, whispering through the leaves of his old treehouse. It's not something he can touch or see, but it's there, a warmth, a memory, a light that flickers softly behind him. And in that quiet companionship, there's peace, because the shadow of innocence doesn't haunt him. It completes him. It's the reminder that no matter how far we travel from our beginnings, a part of us always stays behind to keep the light burning, to hold the memory of our first dream. Finn doesn't try to chase that version of himself anymore. He knows the boy is safe, somewhere beyond the veil of time, still running through endless fields of adventure. There's something deeply poetic about the way Adventure Time treats the passage of youth not as a loss, but as a transformation. Finn doesn't bury his childhood. He integrates it. The world doesn't punish him for growing up. It rewards him with understanding. And even though the colors of his life grow softer, more subdued, they never lose their beauty. They just become more real, like twilight after a bright day. It's easy to imagine that in some corner of the multiverse, the younger Finn and the older Finn still coexist. One full of unbroken wonder, chasing the horizon. The other calm and steady and watching the stars. Perhaps they meet in dreams, sharing quiet stories under the same cosmic sky. And when they do, they don't mourn what's changed. They smile at one another, recognizing that both are necessary. The boy gave the man his fire, and the man gave the boy his peace. Finn's lost innocence, then, is not a ghost to be mourned, but a spirit to be cherished. It's the whisper that reminds him to laugh when life feels too heavy, to forgive when anger feels easier, to hope when the path grows dim. It's what keeps him human in a world that has seen gods fall and monsters rise. That small, unwavering spark, the heart of a boy who wanted to be good, still beats within him. And perhaps that's why Finn's story remains so comforting, because in his shadow, we see our own. We all carry the echoes of who we once were, the parts that believed, the parts that dreamed, the parts that hurt. We all have shadows shaped by the innocence we've outgrown. But like Finn, we can learn to walk beside them, hand in hand, without fear. In the quiet hours of the night, when the stars hang low and the world feels still, it's easy to imagine those shadows coming alive, soft, kind, luminous. They don't ask us to go back. They simply remind us that we were once brave enough to begin. And somewhere in the land of Ooo, under that endless sky of fading gold and lavender, Finn the human still carries that truth. His laughter echoes through the trees, blending with the faint sound of another, the laughter of the boy he used to be. Together, their voices weave through the air like a lullaby. Not of loss, but of love. Not of endings, but of remembering. The boy and the man, the dream and the world, the innocence and the wisdom, all walking the same path side by side, beneath the same eternal light. There are few figures in Ooo as tragic or as misunderstood as the Ice King. To many, he was simply a nuisance, a lonely old wizard who stole princesses and sang strange songs to the empty air. But if you listen closely, beneath the layers of madness and ice, you can still hear the echo of someone else. Someone who once loved deeply, who once laughed freely, who once walked the world as a man named Simon Petrikov. Simon's shadow is unlike any other in the land of Ooo. It isn't the echo of innocence like Finn's, nor the reflection of hunger like Marceline's will be. His is the echo of memory, fragile, scattered, and endlessly repeating. The crown that gave him power also fractured his soul, leaving him half remembering, half forgetting the man he used to be. The Ice King is not simply Simon transformed. He is Simon's shadow given form. When Simon first found the crown, he couldn't have known the cost. It promised protection and knowledge, the ability to survive in a world unraveling. But each time he wore it, a little more of his heart slipped away, buried under the frost. The mind that once studied ancient texts and sang lullabies to a small girl named Marceline began to crack like thin ice. His thoughts drifted, memories blurred, and soon the man he was became just a whisper, echoing faintly inside the walls of his own mind. The Ice King that Ooo would come to know the eccentric, rambling figure who wrote fan fiction and held tea parties with penguins was not evil. He was lonely. He was a spirit trying to fill the silence left behind by everything he had lost. His obsession with princesses wasn't lust or greed. It was the desperate echo of a love he could no longer name. The word princess was all that remained of Betty, a fragment of tenderness left floating in the frozen sea of his thoughts. In that way, every action he took, every misguided kidnapping, every awkward attempt at friendship, was his shadow reaching out, searching for warmth. His madness wasn't chaos, but memory trying to survive without a body. Like a song that's been sung too many times, the melody still lingers even when the words are gone. That's what Ice King was, the last notes of Simon's love song to the world. And there's a haunting beauty in how Adventure Time shows this transformation. When we finally see Simon beneath the crown, his story becomes one of unbearable quiet. He remembers what he's lost, but he can't find the way back. The crown is both his curse and his armor. It keeps him alive, but it keeps him trapped too forever, circling the ruins of his own mind. The snow that falls around him feels like the slow, soft erasure of everything he once was. And yet, even in that endless winter, traces of Simon's soul remain. You can hear it in the songs he sings, strained, broken, but filled with aching sincerity. You can see it in the way he treats Gunther, not as a servant, but as a companion. Somewhere inside the blizzard of his thoughts, there's still kindness, still hope, still love. The man he used to be hasn't vanished entirely. He's dreaming beneath the ice, waiting for someone to wake him. That someone was Marceline, the little girl he once protected after the war, who grew into a woman haunted by the same loss. Their bond is one of the purest in the entire series, a connection that transcends time, sanity, even identity. When they finally meet again as Ice King and Marceline, it isn't an easy reunion. He doesn't remember her, not fully. But something deep within him does. When she sings to him, his eyes soften. The old warmth flickers for a moment, like a candle struggling against the cold. That flicker, that brief flash of recognition, is what I think of as Simon's echo. Is not his consciousness or his memory, but something deeper, his emotional truth. The part of him that loved Marceline and that cherished Betty, that wanted to protect and heal, it still lives on within the Ice King, hidden beneath the layers of frost and confusion. Every act of awkward kindness, every lonely attempt to connect, is that echo trying to find its way back to the surface. And perhaps that's what makes his story so deeply sad, yet so profoundly human. Because we all carry echoes of who we used to be, moments of clarity and warmth buried under the years. Sometimes we act out old patterns without realizing why, chasing the feelings we've forgotten. The Ice King does the same, wandering Ooo not as a villain, but as a dream of Simon that refuses to fade. Even his castle, high atop the snowy peaks, feels like a reflection of his fractured mind. Cold, empty, filled with odd treasures, relics from a past he no longer understands. The walls hum with the soft wind of forgotten memories, and in the quietest moments, when no one is watching, you can almost imagine Simon's voice murmuring from somewhere deep inside, trying to remind himself who he is. It's heartbreaking, but it's also strangely peaceful, because despite all he's lost, there's still a kind of gentleness in him, the same gentleness that once comforted a scared little girl with a toy and a song. That part never fully died. It just became quiet, like a heartbeat beneath the snow. When we think of the Ice King's madness, it's easy to see it as tragedy. But there's also something beautiful in the way it preserves love, even in distortion. The crown, though cruel, didn't erase Simon's feelings entirely. It scattered them, like fragments of glass reflecting bits of his old self. That's why when he calls every princess by a different name, or writes strange fan fiction about heroes in love, it isn't random. It's the crown's way of echoing his buried longing. Every story he invents is a broken prayer, a plea to remember what it felt like to be Simon again. He fills his days with noise, with music, letters, and made-up adventures, not to annoy the world, but to keep the silence from swallowing him. The silence is where the memories hide, waiting to surface, and he's afraid of what they might show him. There's a moment, brief but powerful, when Ice King sits alone in his cave, speaking softly to no one in particular. His words drift between nonsense and truth. You can almost hear Simon's voice beneath them, trembling, trying to escape the cage of his own thoughts. That duality, the man and the shadow, defines everything about him. He isn't just a victim of the crown. He's a mirror of what it means to live with a fragmented self. The Ice King is Simon's sorrow externalized, his grief given wings and a crown of frost. Yet in that brokenness, there's honesty. He feels everything deeply, even if he can't name what he feels. Loneliness, love, confusion. They all swirl inside him like a storm that never ends. And within that storm, you can still hear faint laughter, the echo of a man who once loved the world enough to lose himself for it. When Marceline finally begins to understand that the Ice King isn't just a monster, but the remains of her old friend, the tone of their story shifts. No longer is he someone to be pitied or fixed. He becomes someone to be remembered. Their reunion in I Remember You is one of the most quietly devastating moments in the entire series. As Marceline sings, her voice trembles with grief, and Simon, or what's left of him, hums along, unsure why the melody feels so familiar. The music bridges the gap between them, if only for a heartbeat. That song is more than nostalgia. It's resurrection. For a moment, Simon's shadow flickers back into light. The words he once wrote for her, the affection he once gave freely, all return in fragments. And though he soon slips back into confusion, that glimpse is enough. It tells us that love is never truly lost. It may fall asleep beneath the ice, but it still dreams. What's remarkable is how Ooo itself seems to hold space for him. The world doesn't reject the Ice King. It teases him, ignores him, occasionally fears him, but it never destroys him. Even his worst moments are met with a strange kind of patience. It's as if the land itself understands that he's not evil, he's simply unfinished. A ghost, still learning what it means to exist. The tolerance is rare in stories of madness. Usually the broken are cast aside. But in Adventure Time, they're embraced, folded back into the strange, sprawling dream of existence. And maybe that's why the Ice King's shadow lingers long after his crown is lifted. Because even when Simon returns whole again, the echo of Ice King doesn't vanish. He remains as a memory, a spectral trace of a man who once carried the weight of an ancient curse and found strange beauty in his own ruin. You can see it in Simon's eyes after his restoration, a subtle heaviness, a softness that comes only from having lived inside madness and returned. He remembers, even if he doesn't fully understand. The shadow still follows him, gentle but insistent, like frost that never fully melts. The tragedy of Simon and the Ice King isn't that he lost himself, it's that he learned how vast the self really is. There's the rational man, the scholar who loved and lost. And then there's the dreamer trapped in the ice, the childlike spirit who clung to joy even as everything else faded away. The two halves complete each other, though they can't exist in the same moment. One sees too clearly. The other feels too deeply. Together they form the full echo of Simon Petrikov, the man who became the Ice King and found, within his own undoing, a strange kind of eternity. Sometimes I imagine that even now there's a part of Ice King that still hums through the winds of Ooo, a playful, wandering spirit that sings to the snow and talks to penguins in forgotten tongues, not as madness but as memory made alive. Perhaps that's the true gift of his suffering, that even when Simon moved on, a part of his joy remained behind to color the world. The echo of the Ice King isn't a haunting. It's a lullaby, a reminder that love, once felt, never disappears. It just changes shape. It can become song or snow or a lonely old wizard who still smiles when he hears someone sing his tune. If we look closely, the Ice King's story begins to resemble the story of memory itself. He is what happens when the past refuses to die completely, when the soul splinters rather than fades. Each fragment still shines with a faint reflection of who Simon once was, scattered across time and emotion, like shards of a shattered mirror. His actions erratic, desperate. Tender all stem from that half-remembered love, echoing through the frost-covered corridors of his mind. He collects princesses not out of lust or greed, but because somewhere deep within, he still remembers what it meant to care for someone precious. The crown has twisted that instinct, but not destroyed it. And so he builds castles of ice, sculpting them again and again in patterns that resemble home. The rooms are cold and empty, yet filled with echoes of his humanity. There's something heartbreakingly human in that repetition, the attempt to rebuild meaning from memory, to give shape to what the mind has forgotten, but the heart still recalls. Even the endless blue of his cave carries a strange peace, a kind of quiet the world outside can't understand. Simon's crown, that cursed artifact of ancient magic, acts like a frozen star at the center of his being. Its power is vast but isolating. It demands sacrifice in exchange for survival, sanity in exchange for strength. In many ways, it mirrors the way trauma operates, how the mind reshapes itself to endure what cannot be endured. The Ice King is Simon's survival mechanism, given form, a living defense against despair. And like all defenses, it becomes both prison and protector. What makes his story so powerful is that we never see him as a villain, not truly. He wants to belong, to be loved, to be remembered desires that feel so achingly simple and familiar. When he intrudes into others' lives, it's not out of cruelty, but out of longing. He's reaching through the frost, trying to feel warmth again. Every time he fails, he laughs, because laughter is easier than remembering why it hurts. But in that laughter, there's truth, a small defiance against the silence that once consumed him. Marceline, perhaps more than anyone, sees through that mask. Her grief isn't just for the friend she lost, but for the one who remains trapped inside a shell of snow and song. When she sings to him, it's an act of remembrance, an attempt to bridge the impossible distance between past and present. Their shared melody becomes a bridge of empathy, carrying both pain and love across the frozen chasm that separates them. The music doesn't cure him, but it reminds them both that he was never truly gone. In that sense, the Ice King becomes a kind of myth within Ooo, a living ghost, both guardian and warning. To the world, he's a fool. To Marceline, he's a relic of love. To himself, he's a dream he can't wake from. He is the embodiment of what happens when identity fractures under the weight of loss, yet still strives to love through the confusion. His shadow doesn't haunt the world. It protects it in its own strange way. It reminds the people of Ooo that madness and kindness can coexist, that even the most broken hearts still have room for tenderness. When Seaman is finally freed from the crown, when he returns to himself at last, it's not a triumph in the traditional sense. There's no explosion of victory, no grand awakening. Instead, it feels quiet, bittersweet. The Ice King doesn't vanish with a scream. He fades softly, leaving behind the gentle hush of snowfall. Simon opens his eyes, but the world feels heavier now, emptier somehow. The silence that once frightened him has returned, but this time it carries memory instead of madness. There's an unspoken truth in his gaze. He remembers what it felt like to be both man and myth, both lost and alive. And in that remembering lies sorrow, but also peace. The Ice King was his shadow, yes, but also his teacher. Through that persona, Simon learned the vastness of emotion, the strange truth that love can survive even when reason fails. Sometimes it feels as though Ooo itself mourns the Ice King's passing. The snow seems quieter. Gunter's chirps sound softer, almost reverent. The mountains echo differently now, their voices hollowed by absence. It is as if the land understands that something precious has been released, not destroyed, but transformed. The echo remains, whispering in every cold wind that drifts across the tundra. Maybe in the quiet corners of Ooo, children still tell stories of the silly old wizard who loved too much and forgot too deeply. Maybe they dream of him building ice castles that glimmer under the moonlight, filled with the laughter of penguins and the soft hum of songs long forgotten. Those stories keep him alive, not as a monster, but as a memory of what it means to love through madness, to hold on to warmth even when everything else turns cold. In that way, the Ice King's echo isn't tragic at all. It's tender. It's the persistence of love after logic, the endurance of the heart after everything else has fallen away. Simon may walk the world once more, but the Ice King remains in the snow, smiling softly, still singing his strange little songs to the stars. There's something profoundly gentle in the way the Ice King's story concludes, or rather, how it doesn't really conclude at all. When Simon lives again, freed from the crown's influence, it's as though the universe exhales. But beneath that breath, the faintest trace of frost still lingers, clinging to the edges of his spirit. The crown may be gone, but the memories it carried, the loneliness, the yearning, the childlike wonder have become part of him. He can't return to who he was before, not entirely. The world has changed, and so has he. When we see Simon in the aftermath of his restoration, there's a kind of quiet melancholy to him. He's walking through a world he once knew, but everything feels a little out of step, as though the rhythm of life is just beyond his reach. He's no longer a king, no longer a myth, just a man, fragile and uncertain. And yet, in that vulnerability, he seems more human than ever. His eyes carry the weight of two lifetimes, one of intellect and reason, the other of chaos and longing. What's haunting is that he remembers the Ice King not as an enemy, but as a companion. He speaks of him almost with fondness, acknowledging the strange, sorrowful beauty of that fractured version of himself. It's as if Simon understands that the Ice King wasn't just madness imposed upon him. He was also the vessel that allowed Simon's love to survive when everything else fell apart. The Ice King preserved the ember of affection that Simon might otherwise have lost forever. At Tiziaoafen, there's a tender scene where Simon, standing alone, stares at a fragment of the crown. His reflection wavers in the ice, and for a heartbeat, he almost sees the old familiar grin staring back at him. The air feels colder, softer, as though the ghost of the Ice King is still near, watching, humming one of his offbeat songs. And in that moment, there's no fear, only recognition. Two halves acknowledging each other across the veil of memory. That's the true essence of his echo. It's not a haunting born of regret, but a continuation born of love. The Ice King, in all his foolishness and heartbreak, represented something pure, the desire to connect, to belong, to be loved despite imperfection. And Simon, who now walks in the light of reason again, carries that purity forward. He's no longer only the man who lost his mind. He's the man who survived it, who learned compassion from the shadow he once feared. The Ice King's story is also a mirror for Ooo itself. The world of Adventure Time is filled with remnants, civilizations reborn from ruin, creatures evolved from chaos, and histories rewritten through magic and memory. Simon's journey mirrors that cycle of transformation. The apocalypse shattered the world just as the crown shattered his mind, but from both emerged something new and strangely beautiful. The Ice King was Oo's reflection, a being made from loss, but overflowing with strange hope. Even in his absurdities, there was always sincerity. When he kidnapped princesses, he wasn't acting out of domination, but from confusion, trying to fill a void he couldn't name. When he wrote his fan fiction or performed his songs, he was trying to tell the world that he still existed, even if no one understood him. And isn't that the deepest desire of all, to be seen, even in madness, even in the midst of forgetting? There's comfort in the idea that the Ice King never truly disappears. In the same way that dreams linger after waking, his essence lingers within Ooo. Perhaps he's part of the cold wind that whistles through the mountains. Perhaps his laughter is what gives the northern lights their strange, shimmering rhythm. He's become one with the landscape he once ruled, not as a king, but as a presence, a kind of gentle guardian of memory. And maybe that's the meaning of his shadow. It teaches us that the self is never singular. We are all composites of who we've been, who we are, and who we might still become. Even when pieces of us seem to break away, innocence, sanity, hope they don't vanish. They live on as echoes, shaping the quiet corners of our hearts. The Ice King was Simon's echo, but he was also his compassion made manifest, his yearning given form. As the night deepens and the snow begins to fall again in Ooo, I like to imagine the faint hum of a familiar song carried through the wind. It's off-key, a little silly, but warm somehow. Maybe it's the sound of Ice King, still singing softly somewhere, watching over the world he once misunderstood. And perhaps, if Simon were to look up at the same stars, he might hum along a quiet duet between the man and his shadow, still bound by love across time and transformation. Because in the end, that's what remains of him. Not madness, not sorrow, but love, resilient, persistent, eternal. The Ice King may have melted away, but the warmth he left behind endures. A love that survived the frost. A song that still lingers in the air long after the last note has faded. And that is the echo of Ice King. The shadow that never darkened, only softened. Glowing faintly beneath the moonlight, reminding Ooo and all of us that even the coldest hearts can dream. Marceline has always been a creature of contradictions, half demon, half vampire, and somewhere between immortal and endlessly human. She carries her centuries like soft scars, never quite fading, but never quite healing either. Beneath her playful teasing and songs of heartbreak lies something deeper, an ancient hunger, not only for blood, but for love, connection, and meaning. And that hunger has shaped her more than any of her powers ever could. When we meet her in the early days of Ooo, she seems free, wild, untouchable. She floats through the ruined world with her bass guitar and her toothy grin, feeding on the color red instead of blood. It's a charming quirk at first, something that makes her seem less monstrous. But that small detail holds something profound. She doesn't just feed to survive. She feeds to feel. The red she drinks is the color of passion, warmth, life itself. Each shade she takes in is a substitute for something she's missing. It's as if she's trying to sip the emotions she once had when the world still made sense. There's loneliness wrapped around her like a quiet cloak, the kind that doesn't scream or weep, but hums softly under the surface. It's the loneliness of someone who's lived too long, seen too much, and learned that even eternity can feel empty without someone to share it with. Every song she sings carries that ache, the desire to be known, not as a legend or a monster, but simply as herself, the kind of knowing that doesn't fade when the night ends. What makes Marceline's hunger so haunting is that it isn't about power or survival. It's emotional hunger, the ache for closeness in a world where everything she loves eventually fades away. Time is both her gift and her curse. She remembers when the land was still young, when humanity burned itself out in fire and ash. She remembers the fear, the loss, the silence that came after. And when the world rebuilt itself into something strange and magical, she remained the same face, the same voice, carrying every memory like an unburied ghost. Her relationship with her father, Hansen Abadir, only deepens that wound. He embodies hunger in its rawest form, a creature of endless appetite, devouring souls to sustain his power. For him, consumption is natural, even joyous. But Marceline's hunger frightens her because she knows it isn't meant to destroy. It's meant to connect. Yet no matter how she tries to resist, a part of that demonic inheritance lives in her blood, whispering of need, of emptiness. She's constantly balancing the pull between her heart and her instincts, between compassion and the quiet urge to consume the life she loves most. It's in this tension that Marceline's shadow begins to form, not a darkness that chases her, but one that clings gently to her soul. Her shadow is the echo of all the love she's lost, all the warmth she's tried to drink from the world. Sometimes it takes the shape of her younger self, the scared little girl clutching her worn teddy bear, waiting for her mother to return, for Simon to come back. Other times, it's a reflection of her father's voice, reminding her that hunger is part of who she is, whether she accepts it or not. When Marceline feeds, even symbolically, it's rarely about sustenance. It's about remembering what she used to feel. The color red is the color of her memories of sunsets, of strawberries, of the blood that once beat through her mother's heart. It's not cruelty. It's nostalgia. She drinks from the world not to drain it, but to stay tethered to it, to remind herself that she's still connected to life, even after so many years of death. The gentle tragedy of Marceline is that she doesn't want to be feared, but she can't escape what she is. Her power makes her eternal, but her emotions make her fragile. When she laughs, it's the laughter of someone trying to forget how long they've been alone. When she sings, it's the sound of a heart remembering itself. The songs aren't just expressions of feeling, they're sustenance, too. They feed her in a way blood never could. They allow her to release what she can't say, to transform hunger into art, pain into melody. And through it all, she never loses her tenderness. That's what makes her different from her father and from most of the creatures who share her nature. Even in her loneliness, Marceline chooses love over domination, music over silence. She feeds on color but gives back warmth. She's the kind of being who could easily have become a villain, yet she becomes a lullaby instead. A comforting ghost wandering through Oo's endless twilight. There's something deeply human in that. She represents the side of immortality that no one talks about. Not the power, but the fatigue. The endless yearning to be understood by those who will always fade before you do. To be seen and remembered by a world that keeps changing while you stay the same. Marceline's shadow is her memory of love, frozen in place while time flows past her, like a river she can no longer swim in. And yet, despite the sorrow, she still loves the world. That's her quiet defiance. Even when her hunger aches, even when her heart feels hollow, she never stops reaching for connection. Every friend, every song, every sunrise she witnesses is another sip of red from life's glass, another chance to feel human again, even for a moment. When we see Marceline's relationship with Princess Bubblegum unfold over the years, it reveals how deeply her hunger for connection defines her. Their bond isn't just about affection. It's about the aching need to be understood. Bubblegum represents stability, logic, and a kind of order that Marceline can never fully inhabit. Yet she's drawn to that light, craving it the way she once craved the warmth of the sun. And in return, Bubblegum is drawn to Marceline's chaos, the wild emotion, the freedom, the music that reminds her how to feel. Their love is a conversation between two opposites. Marceline gives voice to everything Bubblegum represses, while Bubblegum anchors Marceline when she drifts too far into her loneliness. It's a dance between hunger and restraint, chaos and control. And through that dance, Marceline finds something close to peace, not the kind that comes from silence, but the kind that grows from being truly seen. In Bubblegum's eyes, she isn't a monster or a memory. She's a person, flawed and beautiful, worthy of love even in her darkness. But love doesn't silence her hunger. It transforms it. With Bubblegum, Marceline learns that her longing doesn't have to consume. It can nourish instead. Her songs shift in tone no longer, just laments for what she's lost, but quiet testaments to what she's found. The melody of her life becomes softer, steadier, yet underneath the ache remains like a low hum beneath every note. It's what makes her music so powerful. It carries both the ache of immortality and the fragile joy of connection. In the quiet corners of Ooo, Marceline's shadow still lingers. It follows her through the ruins she once wandered as a child, through the caves she called home, through the wastelands where she learned to feed and to fear. Her shadow remembers everything she tries to forget: the faces, the fires, the endless nights. It's not malicious, but it's heavy, like a blanket she can't quite put down. She's learned to live with it, to let it move beside her instead of behind her. Sometimes, when she sings, you can almost hear it, harmonizing the voice of her younger self, faint and trembling, singing along. One of the most poignant things about Marceline is how her shadow doesn't just represent pain, it represents empathy. Because she has known so much loss, she understands the quiet sadness in others. It's why she's gentle with creatures the world might call strange or broken. Why she forgives easily, even when she's been hurt. Her hunger teaches her compassion. She knows what it feels like to be empty, and so she fills others where she can, with laughter, with music, with companionship. In her songs, there's always a thread of that kindness. Take Everything Stays, for instance, a lullaby that captures her entire philosophy in a few soft lines. Everything changes, she sings, but also stays the same. The world grows, decays, and renews itself just as she does. Beneath the ache of loss lies a deeper truth. The continuity itself is a kind of comfort. Even when people go, their love leaves ripples that never truly fade. Marceline has lived long enough to see that truth unfold again and again. And though it hurts, she's learned to find beauty in it. There's something profoundly tender in the way she faces her own darkness. She doesn't banish it or pretend it isn't there. She learns to talk to it, to write songs with it, to love it as part of herself. Her shadow isn't her enemy, it's her companion. The part of her that remembers why she feels so deeply. The part that keeps her grounded in a world that might otherwise drift away from her. And because she's accepted it, she becomes whole in her own quiet, imperfect way. Even her relationship with her father transforms through this understanding. Hudson Abadir remains a symbol of hunger unrestrained. But Marceline no longer fears him the way she once did. She sees him as part of the same cycle, a creature who consumes because he cannot connect. In forgiving him, she frees herself from the echo of his appetite. She chooses to channel her hunger into creation rather than destruction. Every song, every friendship, every quiet moment of laughter becomes her rebellion against his emptiness. And maybe that's the true beauty of Marceline's story, that her hunger, once a burden, becomes her source of empathy, her link to the fragile beauty of life. The longer she lives, the more she understands that the ache isn't something to be cured. It's something to be honored. It's proof that she still cares, still feels, still loves despite centuries of solitude. Hunger becomes her heartbeat, steady and eternal, reminding her that she's still part of the world, still alive in it. In this way, Marceline stands as one of the most human souls in all of Ooo, not because she's perfect, but because she's painfully, beautifully flawed. She longs, she grieves, she forgives, and she keeps singing through it all. Her songs are not meant to banish her shadow, but to teach it to dance beside her. If you listen closely to Marceline's songs, you can hear the shape of her shadow within them, the echoes of centuries carried softly between the notes. Each song is a diary she never meant to write, a whisper to the pieces of herself she's lost along the way. Some are playful and teasing, masking sorrow behind humor, while others unfold like quiet confessions, tender and raw. Through music, she releases what words alone can't hold. Every chord is a heartbeat, every lyric a thread tying her to the world that continues to change around her. Her music has always been her refuge, her means of understanding herself when memory becomes too heavy to bear. When she plays, she isn't the vampire queen or the ancient wanderer of Ooo. She's just Marceline, sitting cross-legged with her bass, humming softly into the night. The sound drifts into the emptiness, echoing across the ruins, filling spaces where her friends' laughter used to be. It's a form of healing, though she might not call it that. Her songs allow her to breathe again, to make peace with the ache that never leaves. There's one image that always comes to mind when I think about her. Marceline floating above a quiet lake at dusk, her hair spilling like ink across the surface. Her reflection looking back at her a little younger, a little sadder. She hums to the water, and the ripples carry her voice into the distance. It's almost as though she's singing to her shadow, comforting it the way Simon once comforted her. She has become the guardian of her own loneliness, the caretaker of the parts of herself she used to fear. Her friendship with Finn and Jake also reveals the gentler side of her evolution. They meet her as a trickster, someone mischievous and unpredictable. But over time, she becomes something of an older sister, still teasing, but nurturing in her own way. Through them, she reconnects to something she thought she'd lost forever. Playfulness, innocence, the ability to laugh without feeling the weight of memory. With them, she isn't an immortal being burdened by time. She's simply part of a found family. They remind her that she doesn't have to carry eternity alone. And through these relationships, her hunger begins to quiet. It never leaves, it hums beneath her ribs, a constant reminder, but it softens. It becomes less about need and more about gratitude. She begins to see her long life not as a curse, but as an opportunity to love many times in many ways, to be a witness to Oo's growth, to see her pain turn into stories that ripple through generations. The hunger that once isolated her now connects her to everything around her. It's interesting how Marceline's immortality shapes her understanding of change. She's seen civilizations rise and fall, seen friends turn to dust, seen the world remake itself out of ruin. And yet, she learns to love impermanence. Where once she clung desperately to what she had, she now lets things go with grace. She realizes that nothing truly disappears, it simply transforms. That's the meaning behind everything stays. The red she once consumed to feel alive now glows inside her, the warmth of all she's loved, still burning softly even after time has passed. Her shadow, which once haunted her, becomes her witness. It's not a force pulling her backward anymore, but a quiet reminder that she's made it this far. When she looks at it now, she doesn't see pain, she sees endurance. The girl who survived the end of the world, who learned to love again after every loss. Her shadow carries all the people she's known. Simon's kindness, Bubblegum's devotion, Finn's laughter, her mother's tenderness. It's no longer empty. It's full of them. Full of the life she's absorbed, not to consume, but to keep safe. Sometimes I imagine her sitting on the edge of her cave, guitar in hand, staring out over the dark horizon. The moonlight catches the faint shimmer of tears she doesn't bother to hide. She sings a song no one else will hear, not for fame, not for company, but for herself. Each verse drifts into the stillness like a promise that even in endless night, she will keep shining softly. It's a lullaby to her own shadow, a vow to never forget the love that made her who she is. Marceline's story is a reminder that hunger doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it's the source of our deepest humanity. Her need to feel, to love, to remember, these are the same needs that define all of us. She simply carries them longer. In her, we see what it means to live with longing and still choose tenderness. Her immortality doesn't make her distant. It makes her infinitely empathetic. She knows that everyone she loves will fade, and still she chooses to love them anyway. In a way, that's the truest kind of courage, to open your heart, even when you know it will ache forever. Marceline does it not because she hopes for an ending, but because she's learned that love itself is the point. It's the only thing that makes eternity bearable. Her hunger has become a quiet devotion, a promise to keep feeling, to keep caring, even when it hurts. And so as Ooo drifts into its next chapter, Marceline remains not as a lonely queen or a cursed wanderer, but as a keeper of memory and melody. Her heart may still hunger, but it no longer aches in vain. It beats to the rhythm of the song she's written, steady and endless, echoing softly through the night. Marceline's story becomes, in a way, the emotional spine of Ooo, the bridge between its past and its present. Through her eyes, we glimpse both the tragedy and the beauty of a world that keeps remaking itself. She remembers the world before the Mushroom War, before magic seeped into the bones of the earth. She remembers her mother's voice and Simon's laughter, the smell of cities long turned to ash. But she also knows the thrill of the present, the silly adventures with Finn and Jake, The playful rivalry with bubblegum, the quiet nights spent watching the stars. Her memories stretch across time like an endless thread, weaving all eras into one continuous heartbeat. It's that perspective, that vast awareness of time, that gives her such depth. She understands that even joy comes with grief attached, and that love means accepting loss as part of the same story. Every time she lets someone in, she risks the familiar pain of watching them fade away. And yet, she never stops. When Finn grows older, when Jake's adventures become memories, when new heroes rise and fall, Marceline remains singing their names into her song so that they never truly vanish. She turns her pain into preservation. Her music becomes a vessel for the world's forgotten moments. That's what makes her relationship with Princess Bubblegum so powerful. Beneath the teasing and stubbornness, there's a shared history of loss, both of them shaped by time and responsibility. Bubblegum builds and rebuilds her kingdom to control her world, while Marceline sings and drifts to let go of hers. They are mirrors, opposites, who complete each other. In Obsidian, we see them finally confront the shadows between them, the misunderstandings, the hurt, the distance, and transform it into harmony. When they sing together, it's not just a song, it's reconciliation, forgiveness, and rebirth. Marceline's heart, once hollowed by loneliness, becomes a home again. She learns that immortality doesn't have to mean isolation. By allowing herself to love fully Bubblegum, Finn, even her father, in his own complicated way, she reclaims her humanity. The hunger that defined her ceases to be a void and becomes a pulse, a rhythm that moves with life instead of against it. There's a quiet grace in how she carries herself now, no longer desperate for connection, but open to it. No longer afraid of her own depth, but comfortable swimming in it. The vampire queen, who once haunted ruins and drank from red rivers, now walks through sunlight filtered by memory. She still feels the ache of centuries behind her, but it's softened like an old scar that no longer hurts, only reminds her of survival. Sometimes it's easy to forget that Marceline has lived through more endings than anyone else in Ooo. She's seen heroes come and go, worlds crumble, magic wane. And yet, she endures. She doesn't chase the next adventure the way Finn does, nor cling to control like Bubblegum. She just exists quietly, fully, beautifully in the in-between. She's learned that the truest kind of peace isn't in forgetting what hurt you, but in learning to carry it gently. In the twilight of Ooo, when the skies are painted with those purples and pinks she loves, you can almost imagine her perched on the edge of some cliff, strumming her bass as the wind hums along. Her shadow sits beside her not as a ghost, but as an old friend. They don't fight anymore. They don't speak either. They just share the silence, the long exhale after centuries of noise. It's the kind of peace that only comes after you've seen everything fall apart and still believe in beauty anyway. Marceline represents the endurance of emotion in a world constantly changing shape. She's the memory that music keeps alive, the proof that even monsters can be tender, even immortals can love, and even endless night can hold warmth. In her, we see that being eternal doesn't mean being untouched. It means carrying every touch, every heartbreak, every fleeting joy, and turning it into art. Her hungry heart, once feared as a curse, becomes a gift, a song that never ends, playing softly through the history of Ooo. Long after kingdoms fade, long after heroes rest, her melodies will drift through the ruins, comforting whatever new souls rise to wonder what came before them. The world will forget her face, but not her sound. Somewhere in the wind, there will always be a note of her laughter, a hum of her sorrow, a whisper of her love. Because Marceline isn't just part of Oo's story, she is its echo, its melody, the proof that even shadows can sing, and that hunger, when transformed by love, becomes something eternal. And maybe that's the secret heart of her story, that to live forever isn't about never dying, it's about never stopping the song. Her music, her memories, her endless yearning, they all blend into one soft lullaby for a world that keeps dreaming. As the night deepens and her last note fades into the stars, you can almost hear her voice say, not in words, but in feeling, it's okay to ache. It's okay to remember. It's okay to love, even when it hurts. Because that's what keeps us alive, not the absence of pain, but the courage to keep feeling it. Marceline's hungry heart keeps beating, softly, endlessly, a pulse that hums through every shadow, every star, every dream of Ooh. And as her song fades into the dark, it leaves behind not silence, but something far gentler, the sound of healing. Ooh has always been alive in ways we can't quite measure. Every stretch of land, every glimmering pool, every crooked mountain seems to remember something. A fragment of what once was, a trace of voices that used to laugh or cry there. It's as if the world itself has a memory, and in that memory, all the forgotten lives continue to breathe. The restless spirits of Ooo are not ghosts in the ordinary sense. They're more like feelings that never found rest. They take form when the night is quiet enough, when the air hums with a kind of longing. Sometimes they're visible. Sometimes they're only felt a cool breeze, a flicker of light, a shadow that lingers just a moment too long. Think of the old ruins scattered across the land of Ooo, the collapsed highways, the sunken buildings, the lonely remnants of a civilization that destroyed itself long before Finn was born. Underneath the roots and the candy-colored landscapes, there are stories that still ache to be told. You can almost sense them reaching upward, trying to touch the surface. The ghosts of a world that once dreamed of progress, of technology and wonder, before it all burned away in the Mushroom War. Sometimes when Finn and Jake explored those places, they weren't just adventuring. They were walking through the memories of the Earth. The halls of old power plants and bunkers still hum faintly with forgotten energy. Machines twitch to life as if stirred by old emotions. Even the nightosphere, though it lies beyond the mortal realm, feels like an extension of that restlessness, the inner chaos of beings who couldn't let go. And then there are spirits more personal, the echoes of individuals who once mattered deeply. Shoko, for instance, the ghost of Finn's past self in another lifetime. She wanders the tower of the tree fort, still searching for peace after a lifetime of loneliness. She's not vengeful, not cruel, just quiet, patient, waiting to be remembered. When Finn encounters her, it feels like two threads of a story finally finding each other, a loop gently closing. Her presence shows that Oo's souls don't really disappear. They linger, weaving themselves into the fabric of the living world. Even Marceline's mother, or the phantom memories of Simon's past, echo through time like distant bells. It's as though Ooo doesn't allow anything, not love, not grief, not identity, to vanish entirely. Instead, everything dissolves and reforms, becoming part of the landscape. Maybe that's why so many parts of Ooo feel enchanted. Magic, after all, might just be the language of memory, the way emotions continue to exist after their owners are gone. But there's another kind of restlessness in Ooo, not the sorrow of ghosts, but the curiosity of dreams that never ended. Some spirits don't want to be released. They want to see what the world has become without them. They watch the new heroes rise and wonder if their old purposes still matter. You can almost imagine them drifting through the grasslands, watching Finn from afar, seeing in him pieces of themselves. In his bravery, they recognize their own forgotten courage. In his laughter, their own childlike hope. It's a quiet, tender haunting, not born of regret, but of love. The Candy Kingdom, too, hums with these subtle hauntings. Each citizen, made of sugar and syrup, has a kind of artificial soul, a spark of life created by Princess Bubblegum's hand. But where does that spark go when they melt or crumble or fade? Do they return to the gum that birthed them, or do they float away, weightless and free? There's a haunting sweetness in that idea that every jelly bean ghost or gumdrop spirit might still be wandering the castle halls, softly glowing in the moonlight, murmuring old candy songs no one remembers anymore. And perhaps even Jake, who often brushed off the mystical side of things, felt it now and then. That sense that Ooo itself was awake, that every rock, every puddle, every shimmering star above was watching. The restless spirits of Ooo aren't confined to old lives. They're part of its pulse, its breathing. They remind us that even in a world as whimsical as this one, nothing ever truly disappears. Every act of kindness, every heartbreak, every sacrifice leaves a residue. Sometimes, when the wind moves across the plains and makes the grass sway like an ocean, you can feel that residue, a warmth, a whisper, a feeling that someone is still here, still watching over the land they once loved. Ooo, in that sense, isn't haunted in a frightening way. It's haunted in a living way, full of movement, emotion, and continuity. Every new dawn is painted with the memories of 1,000 yesterdays. And as Finn walks through that ever-changing world, he's surrounded by these unseen presences. They don't speak, they don't guide him directly, but they linger, gentle, eternal witnesses to everything he becomes. The restless spirits of Ooo remind us that endings aren't really endings at all. They're quiet transformations. Moments when one form gives way to another, and the story keeps breathing, softly, beneath the surface. If you stand still long enough in Ooo, the world begins to hum. Not a song you can quite hear, but a vibration you can feel deep, low, and ancient. The mountains seem to breathe, the rivers whisper among themselves. The air carries faint echoes like the sighs of old souls woven into its current. It's as if the land remembers every step that's ever been taken on it, and every story that's ever been told. The restless spirits are part of this hum. They are not trapped, not screaming to be freed. They simply move through that vibration, living in the quiet spaces between moments. Sometimes they take form, slipping into dreams or reflections. A child might see them flicker in the corners of a mirror, or glimpse their outlines in the rippling surface of a pond. Finn once met something like this, a being made of memory or perhaps guilt. It appeared during his deeper journeys inward, when he confronted the many versions of himself. Maybe it wasn't a ghost at all, but rather the world showing him its own dream of who he was. Ooo has a way of blending souls and symbols until it's impossible to tell them apart. There's something deeply peaceful in this idea that the world doesn't let go of what it loves. It recycles it, reshapes it, whispers it into new forms. Every hero leaves behind their shadow, and every shadow grows into something alive. Those who once fought and fell during the Great Mushroom War might now drift through the clouds as faint murmurs of starlight, watching the descendants of a rebuilt planet stumble toward hope. The restless spirits aren't just remnants of death. They are keepers of continuity. Think about the Fire Kingdom. For generations, it's burned upon the remains of something ancient. The flames carry whispers, not only of anger, but of remembrance. Fire is a restless thing. It dances, devours, transforms. Perhaps the spirits there are drawn to the heat because it reminds them of motion, of life. When Flame Princess wrestles with her own destructive nature, Maybe those flames flickering around her are the souls of the old world cheering her on, urging her to turn fury into strength. In contrast, the Ice Kingdom holds a colder kind of haunting. The silence there is deep, the kind that swallows echoes whole. But even in that stillness, traces of voices remain. Ice traps memories perfectly, preserving them like glass. It's possible that within the frozen spires of that lonely realm lie memories of entire civilizations, frozen but awake. They dream together, those fragments, moving slowly through the crystal corridors like drifting stars. Then there's the nightosphere, where the restless take on sharper forms, not as spirits of sorrow, but as embodiments of hunger, chaos, and desire. It's a realm where the echoes of Oo's lost emotions gather, becoming entities in their own right. They dance and argue and burn in endless twilight, feeding on the emotions that created them. Even they are part of the balance, serving as a reminder that nothing in this world truly disappears. Emotion, like energy, only changes shape. And in the quieter corners of Ooo, the fields near the tree fort, the gentle hills by the Candy Kingdom, the shores of the sea of something you can feel another kind of restlessness. Not the pain of old ghosts, but the gentle pull of dreams. The world dreams of itself, of what it could become. Maybe that's why new magic keeps appearing, why strange creatures are born from nothing, why ruins blossom with impossible plants. It's the land's way of remembering and reinventing at once. Sometimes, the restless spirits don't seek peace at all. They seek participation to touch the living world, to nudge it toward harmony. When Finn found the grass sword, for example, that cursed blade seemed alive with something old, a remnant of will bound to him until it became a part of his story. Perhaps the sword's essence was once a spirit to a fragment of someone's lingering purpose. Even in its corruption, there was longing, a yearning to belong again. And in that longing, it found Finn. The world of Ooo is full of such meetings, quiet collisions between the past and present, the living and the spectral. Each encounter adds a new layer to the dream. That's why Ooo never feels empty. Even when its skies grow dark and silent, even when its heroes rest, there's a low thrum beneath everything, the feeling that someone somewhere is still awake, still watching, still caring. The restless spirits of Ooo do not haunt because they are lost. They wander because they are part of the song, a note that keeps resonating even after its instrument has gone quiet. When the wind moves through the forest, when the moonlight glows on forgotten ruins, that song plays softly again, reminding the living that they are never truly alone. At night, when Ooo grows still and the air takes on that silvery calm before dawn, the veil between the living and the unseen thins almost imperceptibly. The forests become denser, the rivers darker, and every sound seems to echo just a bit longer than it should. That's when the restless spirits stir not as phantoms to be feared, but as dreamers who never fully woke up. They drift across the plains and through the broken skeletons of old cities, their forms dissolving and reforming like smoke in water. You can sense them most clearly in places where joy once lived. The ruins of a playground buried beneath moss, where faint laughter still rides on the breeze. The cracked walls of a long-forgotten home, where the scent of something sweet, an old memory of warmth still lingers. These are not hauntings, but imprints of tenderness. Ooo holds onto love as fiercely as it holds onto pain. The world itself refuses to let either emotion go. Sometimes the restless spirits appear in the form of light, pale glimmers hovering above the ground, like stars that decided to settle for a moment among the living. The Flame Kingdom's outskirts, for example, are said to glow with blue fireflies that aren't insects at all, but echoes of souls that once burned too brightly. Travelers speak of hearing faint melodies there, humming just out of reach. Perhaps those are the lullabies of the fallen, carried forward by the wind as if the world itself refuses to let their music fade. And then there are the deeper forests, like the one where the vampire king once ruled. The air there feels heavy, saturated with ancient memory. Creatures stir in the shadows, not out of fear, but reverence. Even the trees seem to remember their bark, carved with the faint grooves of faces that once were, their roots entwined with remnants of old bones, old magic, old love. It's as if the entire ecosystem of Ooo is built upon the forgotten and the remembered, sharing the same breath. In the dreamscapes, those strange, shifting dimensions that sometimes overlap with the waking world, the restless spirits take on more deliberate forms. They appear as guides, reflections, even tricksters. They visit Finn and Jake in dreams, whispering fragments of wisdom wrapped in nonsense. They manifest as faces in the stars or echoes in the water. These encounters always feel surreal but never hostile. It's as though the universe itself is gently reminding its heroes that the boundary between life and memory is only a thin curtain fluttering in the wind. Marceline once described the world as a song that never stops playing. And maybe she was right. The restless spirits are the hidden notes, the harmonies that linger after the melody ends. Each one carries a piece of Oo's emotional history, replaying it endlessly, waiting for someone to listen. When the heroes of Ooo fight, laugh, or cry, they add new chords to that song. Every act of courage becomes a refrain. Every tear becomes a soft percussion beneath the melody of time. But not all of Oo's spirits are gentle. Some carry the deep confusion of being forgotten. These are the lost echoes, fragments of stories cut off too soon. They drift through time like leaves caught in a slow current, searching for a place to rest. You might feel them when you walk through the wastelands where the soil still glows faintly from the scars of old wars. The air there feels crowded, as if filled with countless quiet witnesses, not angry, not vengeful, just waiting. And perhaps, in a strange and comforting way, those lost souls are drawn to the living, not because they need release, but because they crave recognition. To be remembered, even faintly, is to exist again. Maybe that's why Finn sometimes feels an inexplicable calm in the ruins, a sense of companionship in emptiness. The restless spirits don't seek him to frighten or guide him, but simply to bask for a moment in his warmth. His presence affirms what they once were, alive, feeling, and real. The land of Ooo thrives on this exchange. The living and the spectral feed into one another, creating a balance between creation and remembrance. It's why the world feels so layered, as though every blade of grass, every grain of sand, every drop of rain carries within it the memory of something that once was. Even death in Ooo doesn't signify an ending. It's merely another phase of expression, another shape the song takes on as it continues to play. And so the restless spirits drift through the Candy Kingdom's silent corridors when night falls, through the caves beneath the mountains, through the endless horizon where the ocean meets the stars. They travel without destination, drawn not by purpose but by resonance, by the pull of emotion that connects all things. They are not remnants of sorrow or fear, but echoes of care. The proof that love, in all its forms, refuses to be buried. Every sunrise over Ooo brings with it new colors, new voices, new life, yet underneath it all, the old stories keep breathing. The restless spirits of Ooo are those breaths, invisible yet eternal, weaving the past and present into one continuous, dreaming tapestry. When dawn breaks over Ooo, soft and pink, the restless spirits begin to fade back into the folds of the waking world. They retreat not because they are banished, but because their song grows quieter, blending into the hum of life returning. Birds begin to sing, rivers start to sparkle, and the laughter of the living fills the air again. The spirits linger at the edges of that sound like a harmony that only the heart can hear. There's a gentleness in how they coexist with the living. No boundaries, no walls, just layers of time folded upon each other. The children of Ooo grow up surrounded by these unseen presences. When they talk to their shadows, or laugh at the wind, or whisper goodnight to the moon, they're unknowingly speaking to the echoes that cradle their world. It's an unspoken pact. The living carry the stories forward, and the spirits keep watch, ensuring that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost. Even the great cosmic forces seem to respect this balance. Death himself, with his hollow voice and quiet dignity, tends to these souls not as a jailer, but as a caretaker. He doesn't command the restless to leave. He waits until they're ready to rest. Some never do, and that's all right. In Ooo, rest doesn't always mean stillness. Sometimes it means movement, the continued rhythm of being remembered through another's actions, another's kindness, another's song. Finn, more than anyone, came to understand this. His adventures were full of laughter and danger, but beneath them all was a growing awareness that everything he touched was connected to something larger, something unseen. Every tree he passed had watched countless lives unfold. Every creature he met carried echoes of forgotten ancestors. The more he lived, the more he realized that life and memory are the same thing, just seen from different sides of time. Maybe that's why he never feared the haunted places, the quiet ruins, the eerie silences. He felt at home among them. Because for Finn, ghosts were not signs of something gone wrong. They were signs that the world still remembered, that the past was still reaching forward to hold hands with the present. He understood that the restless spirits weren't just pieces of the dead. They were guardians of the living. They carried lessons, regrets, joys, all the emotions, too important to disappear. Sometimes at night, when Finn sat beneath the stars, he would feel it again, that soft pressure in the air, that sense of being surrounded by something vast and kind. Jake would stretch out beside him, the two of them quiet, their breaths syncing with the rhythm of the crickets and wind. In moments like that, the line between life and afterlife blurred completely. They weren't just two friends under a sky. They were part of Oo's ongoing heartbeat, one that pulsed through both the seen and the unseen. And that heartbeat keeps going. When one generation of heroes fades, the next rises, and with them come new dreams, new fears, new echoes waiting to be born. But the restless spirits remain constant, a silent chorus beneath it all. They don't mourn change, they celebrate it. For every new adventure adds another verse to the song of Ooo. In some distant future, when the tree fort has become a mound of moss, and the Candy Kingdom has melted back into the earth, those spirits will still be there. Maybe they'll drift through the ruins of a world reborn, whispering the names of heroes long gone, watching the children of a new age play in fields that once held battle scars. The world will forget, as it always does, but forgetting is not the same as erasing. The spirits will make sure of that. They'll move in the color of the sunset, in the sigh of the wind across the water. They'll linger in the laughter of a child who doesn't know why the air feels warm with love. They'll hum through the stones and trees and stars a quiet promise that every act of courage, every kindness, every song ever sung still exists somewhere, waiting to be felt again. Because that's the truth of Ooo. Its magic isn't just in the strange creatures or the radiant landscapes. It's in the persistence of emotion, the endurance of memory, It's in the way everything from the smallest blade of grass to the grandest hero leaves behind something of itself, something that stirs when the night grows quiet, reminding the world that love and wonder never die. The restless spirits of Ooo are not ghosts in the way we imagine them. They are love made visible. They are remembrance taking shape. They are the hum beneath the laughter, the shimmer behind the dream, the echo that reminds us that nothing and no one is ever truly gone. When you close your eyes and picture Ooo, its candy skies, its shimmering rivers, its endless hills, know that somewhere within that dream, countless gentle spirits are still moving. They're watching over the stories yet to be told. They're waiting for the next hero to wake, the next heart to love, the next song to rise. And as long as Ooo dreams, they will never rest completely, nor should they. For in their wandering, they keep the world alive. The Candy Kingdom sleeps differently from the rest of Ooo. Its nights are gentle, sugar-sweet, and filled with the hum of tiny machines keeping the city's colors from fading. The air always smells faintly of caramel and soft vanilla. Even when everything grows still, there's a quiet shimmer in the streets, like the memory of laughter echoing from the day before. Tonight, the moonlight bends through the stained glass towers, scattering pink and gold reflections across the candy brick walls. The kingdom feels peaceful on the surface, but beneath its bright facades and frosting-like rooftops, the night has its own stories. The kind no one writes down, the kind that happen while everyone else is fast asleep. Long after curfew, when the last of the banana guards have dozed off at their posts, a soft tapping sound echoes through one of the narrow alleyways behind the central square. It's Peppermint Butler, dressed in his small, dark cloak, carrying a glass jar that glows faintly blue. His footsteps make no sound on the sugar-stone pavement. He moves quickly, glancing up now and then at the distant spire of Princess Bubblegum's castle. Inside the jar, something flickers a small swirl of luminescent mist, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. He mutters quietly to himself, his words almost too low to catch. One more ingredient. Just one more. He slips through a hidden archway behind the confectionery and descends a spiral staircase lit by softly glowing jelly lanterns. The air grows cooler as he goes deeper, the sweetness of the city above replaced by the faint smell of chalk and old parchment. This is one of the Candy Kingdom's secret layers, an underground archive that few even know exists. Rows of shelves stretch endlessly, holding jars, books, and curious candy-shaped devices. Peppermint Butler sets his jar carefully on a table shaped like a melted sugar drop and unrolls a faded scroll. The paper hums faintly, alive with old enchantments. He studies it with a smile that's half mischief, half reverence. He's not doing anything dangerous tonight, not quite. Just a little maintenance, a gentle adjustment to keep certain protective spells running smoothly. The Candy Kingdom, bright and cheerful as it seems, sits atop delicate layers of ancient magic, and every so often, someone has to make sure the balance holds. He lights a small blue flame in his palm and waves it over the scroll. The symbols shimmer, their glow softening, fading from red to gold. The air trembles gently and the walls seem to sigh. Then silence again. He nods to himself, satisfied. Above, the castle hums faintly with energy, the quiet, steady breathing of a living city. Every candy citizen, dreaming in their frosting-covered homes, is unknowingly protected by this soft pulse, this ancient heartbeat of sugar and science. But not everyone in the kingdom is asleep. A few stories away, in a smaller tower on the castle's east side, a window glows faintly pink. Inside, a young gumball guardian, smaller than the ones who stand watch outside, sits by the window with a stack of storybooks. Their round face glimmers in the moonlight as they slowly turn the pages, whispering the tales to themselves. They're reading the old legends of the Candy Kingdom, written long before Princess Bubblegum's rule stories about the first confections, the early sweets who shaped the land before it ever became a kingdom. Their names are strange, like fragments of dreams. The molasses monarch, the marshmallow seer, the toffee twin. Most candy citizens have forgotten them entirely, but this little guardian reads each name carefully, almost reverently. Outside the window, the night breeze stirs faintly, carrying the sound of distant chimes. The guardian pauses, looking out toward the horizon where the stars bend faintly in the direction of the gumdrop hills. For a moment, they could swear they see a faint shape moving there, something tall, something glowing softly blue. They blink, and it's gone. They smile nervously and close the book, hugging it to their chest. Just stories, they whisper, though part of them wonders if the oldest tales ever truly fade in this land, made from dreams and sugar. Far below, Peppermint Butler feels the faint shift in the air, too. He looks up, his small eyes narrowing. He murmurs, tilting his head. The scroll on the table flutters slightly, as if stirred by a wind that isn't really there. He waves his hand again, checking the runes, but everything seems calm. Still, he can't shake the sense that something old just stirred something that remembers what the Candy Kingdom used to be before the sweet walls and polished towers. Before it became a kingdom of order and science, it was something wilder. A place of experiments and accidents, of magic mixed with sugar and dreams. He sighs softly and snuffs out the blue flame. Not tonight, he says to the shadows. Let the kingdom rest. He picks up his jar, now glowing a calm golden hue, and begins to climb back toward the surface. Above him, the walls of the archive hum faintly, the vibration of something ancient, breathing slow and steady. The kingdom sleeps, but its heart is still awake. And somewhere above, in the quiet chambers of the castle, Princess Bubblegum herself turns in her bed, her brow furrowing faintly as if she's dreaming of equations or half-formed memories of another time. The pink light from her laboratory windows fades, but beneath the floorboards, something continues to hum a soft rhythm, the pulse of the unseen stories that keep the Candy Kingdom alive. Outside, the night deepens. The streets of the Candy Kingdom gleam faintly under the moonlight, each cobblestone catching the glow as if it remembers sunlight from long ago. The sugary rooftops glisten like frost, and a gentle mist begins to drift through the narrow alleys. From afar, the whole kingdom looks like a dream made solid, a fragile constellation of sweetness floating in a sea of blue. In the plaza, a small fountain shaped like a melting ice cream cone burbles softly, though no one is awake to hear it, except for one. Cinnamon Bun sits on the edge of the fountain, staring at his reflection in the rippling water. His large, uneven eyes blink slowly as he hums to himself. He's not supposed to be awake this late, but sleep never comes easily to him. The night feels too quiet, too thoughtful. He runs a sticky hand through the water, watching the ripples distort his reflection until it looks like another face entirely. Sometimes he wonders if the Candy Kingdom dreams, if all the buildings and suites that make up its body share a single dream, or if each piece of candy dreams alone. Maybe he thinks the whole city is one big dream, and they're all just bits of sugar pretending to be alive for a little while. He laughs softly to himself, a deep, slow sound that echoes through the plaza. That's silly, he says, shaking his head. But still his smile fades a little. He looks up at the castle's tallest spire, where a faint glow flickers in one of the top windows. PB's still working, he murmurs. He's not surprised. Princess Bubblegum always seems to be awake, always building, fixing, creating. He likes to imagine that she doesn't sleep because she's guarding everyone's dreams, that while they rest, she keeps the whole kingdom alive with her thoughts. A gust of wind brushes past him, carrying the faintest scent of burnt sugar and something older, something faintly electric. Cinnamon Bun tilts his head. The air feels different for a moment, charged, almost alive. Then, just as quickly, it fades. He decides not to think too much about it, and dips his fingers back into the water. Up in the castle, Princess Bubblegum sits at her desk, staring into a vial of liquid light. Her room is quiet, except for the ticking of her sugar crystal clock and the soft rustle of notes spread across the desk. She's been awake for hours, unable to sleep after feeling that same strange pulse in the air earlier. On the page before her are old sketches, half-finished diagrams of the Candy Kingdom's foundations. She traces a line on the paper with her finger, following the delicate network of runes that weave beneath the city. These aren't her designs, they're far older. Some of them, she realizes, might even predate her own creation. That thought always unsettles her a little. For all her brilliance and control, she sometimes forgets that she wasn't the first to mold the sugar and syrup of this world into life. Someone or something came before her, and their handiwork still breathes quietly beneath everything she built. She adjusts her glasses and studies the map again. One rune near the edge of the parchment glows faintly under the candlelight. It's shaped like a spiral, simple, elegant, endlessly looping. She's seen it before, hidden deep within the kingdom's oldest tunnels. She once tried to decipher it, but could never fully understand its purpose. It resists logic, as if written in a language of memory rather than reason. For a long moment, she simply watches the rune glow, lost in thought. Then she sighs softly, sits back, and closes her eyes. Her mind is too full of equations and possibilities, too full of what-ifs. She lets herself breathe slowly, deeply. For the first time that night, she allows her thoughts to drift, to let go of calculations and inventions, and instead just feel the hum of the castle around her. It's subtle, but it's there, a quiet rhythm beneath her feet, steady and comforting. The same pulse Peppermint Butler felt below. Her lips curve into a small smile. "Still with me," she whispers to the walls. "Good." Outside her window, the moon shifts behind a cloud, and the glow of the city dims. The streets, the rooftops, the towers, they all seem to take one slow, collective breath. For a heartbeat, it feels as if the whole Candy Kingdom sighs in its sleep. Princess Bubblegum watches the city from her balcony, arms resting on the cool candy railing. From this height, she can see nearly everything: the gumdrop streets winding like rivers, the flickering lamps, the faint silhouettes of sleeping citizens. And somewhere down below, she spots Cinnamon Bun by the fountain, still awake, still humming softly to himself. She smiles fondly. "He always finds the quietest corners," she murmurs. Maybe that's why the city never feels lonely. A single shooting star streaks across the sky, bright and fast. For just a second, it reflects in the candy glass of her balcony, and then it's gone. But its light lingers faintly in the streets below, shimmering like a blessing over the sleeping kingdom. The night deepens again, calm and slow. But something beneath the surface of the Candy Kingdom stirs, not in danger, not in fear, but in remembrance. The kind of quiet awakening that only happens when the world dreams of itself. Deep below the foundations of the Candy Kingdom, where sunlight and song can no longer reach, there lies another layer older than anything Princess Bubblegum has built. It's not made of sugar or candy stone, but of something stranger. A crystalline substance that hums faintly when touched, as if it remembers voices that once spoke in its halls. The air here is cool and thick with the scent of syrup and thyme. Peppermint Butler moves carefully through these tunnels, holding a lantern shaped like a melted gumdrop. Its flame flickers with soft blue light, casting ghostly reflections across the crystalline walls. He's been here before, though never this deep. Each step echoes gently, the sound swallowed almost immediately by the humming air. He stops at a large archway, half collapsed, with faint runes carved into its edges. The markings pulse with a soft golden glow, the same looping spiral that Princess Bubblegum had seen in her notes. Peppermint traces a finger across one of the symbols. "You again," he mutters quietly. "What are you keeping?" For a moment, nothing happens. Then, as if in answer, a low vibration travels through the floor, almost like the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. The air grows warmer, and his lantern flame flickers. Peppermint's small eyes widen, but he doesn't step back. He just watches. The runes shimmer brighter for a moment, then fade back to their gentle hum. The vibration stops, leaving behind a silence that feels somehow deeper than before. Peppermint exhales slowly, lowering his lantern. "Still dreaming," he says softly. "Good. Let it stay that way." He doesn't disturb the archway any further. Instead, he places a small candy coin on the floor, a quiet offering, a token of respect, and begins the long walk back toward the surface. Above, the first hints of dawn are still hours away. The castle sleeps. The citizens dream. But the unseen foundation beneath their feet continues to hum the old sugarstone, breathing in harmony with the new. The kingdom is alive in every sense of the word, and it remembers. In her room, Princess Bubblegum has finally drifted into a light sleep, her head resting on her desk beside her scattered notes. Her dreams are strange and sweet, and a little sad. She finds herself walking through an endless hallway of candy-colored glass, her footsteps echoing like music. On either side, scenes flicker within the glass memories of her people, of her own creations, of laughter and storms, of rebuilding and forgiving. Then something changes. The glass begins to ripple, as though the hallway itself is made of syrup. The reflections melt together, forming a single image, a tall figure made of soft light, with eyes like molten amber. It looks down at her with a kind of ancient fondness. "You've done well," the figure says, its voice a blend of countless tones, deep, sweet, airy, and strange. "But remember, child of sugar, you are not the first to dream." Bubblegum tries to speak, but her voice doesn't reach the air. The figure continues, gentle and calm. "Dreams are not meant to be owned, only continued." And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the vision fades. She's standing alone in the empty hallway again, the air filled with the scent of warm caramel. A faint whisper follows, drifting through the glass like a lullaby. "Keep building, little. The dream isn't done yet." When she wakes, the candle on her desk has burned out, and sunlight is just beginning to spill into the room. For a moment, she sits in silence, unsure if what she saw was a dream or something deeper. Then she stands and walks to the window. The Candy Kingdom glows in the early light, its towers soft and golden, the streets shimmering with dew. The scent of sugar fills the air, and somewhere in the plaza, Cinnamon Bun has finally fallen asleep beside the fountain, head resting against the cool marble edge. A few candy people are starting to stir, stretching and yawning, their voices faint and content. Princess Bubblegum smiles faintly. "You were here before me," she whispers to the air. "And maybe you'll be here long after. But for now, we're sharing this dream." She turns back to her desk, gathering her notes, and begins to write again. Not a new formula this time, not a new invention, just thoughts, impressions, half-memories of the dream she had. Words that might one day become a song or a story or just another mystery buried beneath the candy streets. Outside, the sun rises fully, washing the kingdom in pale pink light. The glass towers catch it beautifully, scattering color in all directions. It looks almost alive, as if the entire kingdom is waking from the same dream at once. Peppermint Butler emerges from the lower tunnels, blinking at the brightness. He adjusts his cloak and looks up toward the castle, feeling the faint warmth on his face. Morning again. Guess we made it through another night. And somewhere deep beneath the earth, hidden under layers of sugar and time, the crystalline walls pulse once, almost like a heartbeat answering him. A slow, steady rhythm that says the Candy Kingdom is still dreaming, still alive, and still quietly watching over its people. For now, all is calm. The laughter of waking citizens fills the streets, and the scent of freshly baked pastries drifts through the air. The hidden stories go quiet again, content to rest beneath the surface until the next night calls them back into motion, unseen, unspoken, but always there, woven into the sweet heart of the Candy Kingdom. Later that morning, when the streets have filled with gentle chatter and the sunlight dances through the sugar-glass rooftops, the hidden life of the Candy Kingdom continues to breathe quietly, unseen by most. The marketplace hums with activity, not chaotic, but harmonious, like the low murmur of a lullaby. Candy people trade smiles as much as they trade goods. Peppermint carts roll past walls that still remember whispers from centuries ago. The stones beneath their feet gleam faintly, reflecting the joy above and the memories below. But if you could listen closely past the laughter, past the music of daily life, you might hear it again. That faint hum beneath everything. It's not mechanical. It's not magic exactly. It's something older. The sound of the kingdom itself remembering what it once was and what it still hopes to be. Up on the highest tower, Princess Bubblegum stands by a window overlooking the city. Her hair glows faintly in the sunlight. In one hand, she holds a glass beaker filled with a slow-moving pink liquid. It catches the light like a captured sunrise. She tilts it, watching it swirl, her mind somewhere, far beyond formulas. The memory of her dream still lingers, that ancient figure of light. Those words that felt both like a warning and a promise. In her lab journal, she's written a new entry. Maybe the kingdom is not only built, maybe it grows. She pauses, staring at the words for a long time. Then she adds another line beneath it. If it dreams, perhaps I should listen. She sets the beaker down, takes a breath, and looks out the window again. Below her, the candy people go about their day blissfully unaware of the unseen pulse beneath them. Peppermint Butler walks through the courtyard carrying a small box wrapped in dark ribbon. Cinnamon Bun snoozes by the fountain again. A group of gumball guardians stand motionless at the gate, their eyes faintly glowing with that same rhythm that hums deep underground. Princess Bubblegum smiles. We're all part of it, she says softly, even the ones who don't know. As the day fades, the city begins to glow in softer tones. The candy glass takes on a lavender sheen, and the lights flicker on small lanterns shaped like stars strung across the streets and rooftops. Children chase the first fireflies of the evening, their laughter echoing gently between the houses. The kingdom grows quieter, gentler, as if the air itself is preparing for sleep. Peppermint Butler finishes his nightly rounds, locking doors, checking the wards that keep the deeper tunnel sealed. Before he leaves the courtyard, he stops once more near the fountain and touches the edge of the stone. The water ripples faintly, and for a split second, he swears he sees something reflected there. A soft pulse of golden light, faint but alive. He nods once, satisfied. Still dreaming, he murmurs again. That's all that matters. From her tower, Bubblegum watches the kingdom settle into its nightly rhythm. She sees families heading home, little candy children carrying glowing jelly lanterns, the lights of homes flickering on one by one. She can almost feel the warmth of it radiating through the glass, the heartbeat of her people. It's a living network of dreams and sweetness, built not only by science, but by care, by patience, and by something like love. She whispers, "Sleep well, my kingdom." Down below, the candy people close their shutters, tuck themselves into beds of spun sugar and caramel quilts. The streets fall still. Only the faint sound of the fountain remains, and the quiet hum beneath the earth steady, peaceful, like a lullaby, sung by the world itself. The stars rise high, reflected in the glossy domes of the city. The walls that were once part of some ancient civilization now cradle the gentle lives of new generations. The past and the present breathe together perfectly in sync. Somewhere deep beneath the castle, the crystalline heart glows one slow, steady content. It doesn't speak, it doesn't stir, but it feels. It remembers the laughter above. It remembers the queen who listens, the butler who guards, the people who dream. And in that memory, it rests safe, peaceful, complete. High in her tower, Princess Bubblegum finally leaves her notes aside and curls up beside her window. She doesn't need the candle tonight. The glow of the kingdom below is enough to light the room in soft pink. She watches the horizon fade into indigo, her eyes heavy but calm. For the first time in many nights, she lets herself truly rest, not because her work is done, but because she knows the kingdom itself will keep watching. The hum grows quieter, slower, more like breathing than sound. The night deepens, gentle and endless. The air feels warm, like the aftertaste of sugar on the tongue. Somewhere far below, in the oldest chambers of all, the crystalline walls pulse one final time before sleep, sending a ripple of soft light through the stone. The Candy Kingdom exhales serene and alive as the stars above twinkle in approval. The kingdom dreams again of sweetness and sorrow, of laughter and creation, of the stories still unwritten, waiting beneath the surface. The kind of dreams that never really end, but simply wait for morning to arrive before beginning again. Good night.